Hello. Games Master's advice. I'm always a little bit wary on Games Master's advice because a lot of it's very, very generic, and doesn't and a lot of it's personal. When I find when other Games Masters are giving out advice, it's kind of personal to them, and doesn't really apply to groups because, of course, every group's different. I think the thing is, it's easy for me to say that because I've been playing role-playing games now for like 40 years. So everything I've learned as a GM is I've learned through experience, not from what I've learned from what I've read or from what I've seen on videos and what have you. I'd say probably about 75–80% of what I've learned has been through experience, through my own GMing and experiencing other GMings and other people GMing and finding out what it is that I want from a game. There was loads of really good GM advice in books, especially the Star Wars role-playing game, the original one from '87. I've explained that before, and yeah, there's kind of direct advice, just basically telling you what you should be doing as a GM. But I think when certain advice becomes a little bit more personal, like you should treat your players this way, you should allow your players to do this. It doesn't really apply to every single group. Every single group's different. And I was reading recently somebody talking about how they really enjoy being a GM. But over the last couple of years, they've been reading a lot of articles about how to GM or what you should be doing as GM, and their confidence has plummeted because they're reading these articles and all these advice columns or watching these videos, and they're thinking, I should be doing that. Should I have done that? Are my players going to be upset because I didn't do that? Am I doing it wrong? And they've kind of taught themselves into a bit of a corner. You know what I mean? They've kind of convinced themselves that they're doing it wrong because everybody else is doing it a different way. So a lot of time when I come across GM advice, I kind of take it with a bit of pinch of salt. The chances are I'm going to learn something, or I'm going to interpret what they're saying and sort of go in a different direction with it. But I never take it as set in stone. You know, I never see their advice as this is how you should be done. It's rules as written, and if you don't doing it, you're doing it wrong. Because the moment you do that, you're kind of ruining it for yourself because you've got to GM the way that you enjoy GMing or the way that your group enjoys GMing. So I think my advice is not GM advice, it's group advice. And my advice would be just be patient. People are going to make mistakes. They're going to want to backtrack. They're going to want to they are going to make mistakes as GMs and as players because they're probably finding their feet as well. So just be a bit patient, be understanding, give honest feedback. You know what I mean? Maybe curb your expectations for what the game's going to be like. You don't want to go into a game thinking I've just read Lord of the Rings, that's what I want my game to be, or Conan, or what have you, or Legend, and that's what your expectation of the game is going to be. Everybody can have their own expectations as to what the game's going to be, and a lot of the time the people blame the GM for a bad game. They didn't enjoy themselves. That's obviously the GM's fault. Well, maybe take a bit of a step back and have a look at yourself and see what your expectations are as a player. And as a GM, find out what their expectations are. Maybe incorporate that into the game if you can, but the pressure shouldn't be on the GM all the time. And they certainly shouldn't be spending all their time scouring, looking for GM advice, only to convince themselves that they're doing it wrong. And then, like I say, their confidence goes down. And because they've got all this mishmash of different kinds of advice which they're trying to incorporate into the game just becomes some sort of weird patchwork, and people will lose interest if there's no focus. So yeah, my GMing advice is group advice. Everybody sort of should take their ownership of their role at that group. The GM is just part of the gaming group. Yeah, they're going to be putting in some extra work because they've got more characters to play. They've got to be rules arbiter. They've probably got to design the adventure, but they're there to have fun as well. So it's I think a lot of it comes down to expectations. I think a lot of people have different expectations as to what they want from a game, and that can, people can be selfish. People can be selfish about what they want. People can be selfish about what they expect, and if they don't get what they want, some people can react negatively. So I don't even know if I'm making any sense. So I think I want to leave it there. So yeah, GM advice. Yeah, listen to it, but don't think you need to do everything. Find what's comfortable for you, and what's comfortable, but mainly not just what's comfortable for you, what's comfortable for your group, so that you all enjoy the experience. The GM's a player as well, and they shouldn't have to give up their enjoyment. They shouldn't have to sacrifice their fun just to make everybody else happy, or to make some kind of great consensus as to what makes a good GM happy. There's this thing called the Matt Mercer effect. Obviously from Critical Role, and everybody thinks, oh, that's how a game should be. It should be it should be voice acting with special effects, and should tell these deep stories. But if you go in expecting that in the game, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because a lot of the games are just people trying to have fun, not necessarily telling an epic story, but just having a fun adventure at the table, and that's what it is. Don't get me wrong, I'm impressed by Matt Mercer, but then again, he's got the time and the energy to do it. Whereas I might get a couple of hours in my working week to design a game which I'll run on a Sunday afternoon for me and my mates. And there's no expectations there. They just want to play a game and have some fun. And at the end of the day, that's a lot of the time that's what it's all about. So yeah. So that's me just rambling, I think, about GM advice. There's me giving out loads of GM advice, and but obviously I can't take it because I'm a miserable old sod. Anyway, thanks for listening. Ta-ra.